What's up, y'all? It's your boy Aniki. I believe we are live. Things take some time to load. So not gonna ramble too hard, too fast. Same as always. But we're going live, baby. All right. Welcome back. Glad to have some of you back who will be coming in. For those of you listening to the VOD or coming in live, always glad to have you here. There we go. My words work, I promise. Uh, Let me go ahead and alert the team, make sure everybody knows that we are cooking in Spanish. There's the Madman and Tiger Blaster already in the building. Appreciate you. Let's see, drop that in the Discord so that people know we're live. As always, we let people file in a bit before I don't care. YouTube, stop trying to sell me TV. I don't come to you for TV. I come to you for media analysis and other random things. Uh, all right. Last week, we left off with the Hawks vestige chilling inside of All for One. We had All for One's biggest attack to date. Bakugo stared him down. Explosion full cowling. We were cooking. We were cooking. So, so I'm looking forward to what we get this week because, quite frankly, I don't know what to expect. I haven't been spoiled. Nobody said anything crazy on my timeline. Things are looking clean. But I don't know if nobody said anything. Well, actually, no. I think I did see some people start talking about Hawks, but I don't know what they were saying about Hawks because I was pretty much running away from that. But so there's a chance of that. But Hawks being in this chapter, getting to see some of the vestige, that all just tracks. I'm hoping to see Hawks actually kind of fight back. I think it's kind of cool that we took a squirt, but we're still gonna get to kind of see him take some steps forward in theory. Uh, Make sure I don't want to write a check that all of a sudden I'm wrong about. So, but in theory, we'll see him, get to pop off, do something, maybe fight back against the will of All for One. Do I feel like waiting for people to get here? No, I don't. Hey, what up, Denzel? All right, peak chapter today. Then yeah, we just hopping in. I don't even care no more. I don't feel like being patient. I feel like consuming. Oh, is that baby? Oh, new chapter in 14 days. All right, so that's Christmas Eve for the next chapter. We stream that day. That'll probably be a short one because most people aren't going to be available. I'm just being honest. Most people are probably going to be unavailable. Uh, let's see. So we get the birth of Bakugo. Oh, I had as much hair as my daughter at birth. Uh, we see his dad crying. Of course, he's crying. Of course, he's crying. The chapter is titled Explosion. I'm going to make all my skills my own and keep rising. My explosion can pull off anything I want it to. Important that we get this flashback from the provisional license exam, and then we get that flashback to the Endeavor Agency arc, which are two pretty funny. Maybe if you said good morning, I'd like to stream. Okay, I'm unemployed, so I'll be available. Oof, when did that happen? I thought you were still working at Master Lot. Izuku. I won't stand in your way anymore. All right, so just off the fact that Caleb has been calling him Izuku, that means that Bakudex should not have a lot to complain about this chapter. I'm also amazed that Bakudex stuff didn't pop onto my timeline somehow because they're usually Dodge it, kid. Okay, so it is often that Bakugo gets compared to characters like Vegeta, characters like Sasuke, And I kind of appreciate Horikoshi leaning into that here with Bakugo having his hands posted up. We got him exploding, standing resolute, standing as resolute as one can. All Might yelling for him to dodge it. Please blow up. Blow the hell up. Hold up, hold up. Okay. Okay. I'm looking at this image. His big tentacle blob thing is firing off, going. And then we see Awful One's mouth open up. It looks like his face is ripping apart. Boom. We see an explosion. How can this be? The boy didn't take any clear action just now. The rain's putting a damper on my oomph. So I fired off some coated beads. Beads of explosive sweat coated with regular sweat, I mean. I shot him off without triggering him, hoping that something else might set him off on a delay. Okay, so one of the things that, and I'm sorry, long-term viewers slash listeners, that you have to hear me go and talk about this even more. Bakugo's sweat aspect of his quirk, like the entire time we talked about channeling the explosion, channeling how big it is, focusing the proximity, the range, all these other things. But one of the things that I really wanted to see get some focus and improve was just the utilization of the sweat itself. Yeah, it was being stored for explosives, but we started getting that with the beads, right? Like the cluster with the quality of sweat, like the amount of explosive property in it, the condensation of the explosive property. Here we see it take it to another extreme, like both the highly explosive sweat and non-explosive sweat. So we're basically now separating these and getting down into the chemistry of this work. And so I'm just really, really glad. So this is one of those things where when you talk about My Hero's power system, there is nobody better than Bakugo for discussing the nuances behind it, how it impacts people's physiology, uh, how flexible a quirk can truly be. Just the guy's quirk is so good for theory crafting, for power system stuff, for just looking at what makes the quirk system really work. And so to see him mixing sweat types and just yeah, back there straight into my mouth at the last second. If nothing else, I've always earned kudos for my intuition. The one perk I've got is enough. And he's warming up that howitzer. You can tell because he's spitting. The more damage he takes, the younger he regresses. Get the picture? All the damage has thrown my powers into disarray, but I need only to unleash them once more. This is my tale. Move aside, you extra, you nobody. And then we get a howitzer impact. Ooh, hold on. It looks like the explosion is ripping through the giant mass. Okay. So from the All Might angle, you can tell this is a pretty intense explosion. Damage to the face. Get wrecked. Ooh wee. Ooh wee. Bruh. Horikoshi is in his bag. This spread of Bakugo just exploding him every which way he possibly can. Man, hold up, man. Well, hold up. Where my spread go? Don't do me like this, Viz. This website. Don't play with me. Don't play with me, Viz. Don't disrespect me. As you can see, he's shooting from his feet, shooting, which lets him deflect. Man, listen. All the areas he's blowing up, and that's the core AFO body just getting lit up. Even the little pauldrons on the shoulders, explosions coming out the knees, which it's funny because if you remember all the way back when Bakugo's costume design was revealed, it was stated that his knees were for murdering, even though he hadn't used any knee attacks yet in the series. So for Horikoshi to go out of his way to have those holes in the knee system and then have those firing off explosions too now, the random aesthetic things on his shoulders and collar firing out explosions, just Horikoshi taking every avenue that he's created and set up in that costume and just paying dividends with it through this grand howitzer. The Get Wrecked edition is chef's kiss. And shut. Oh my. See, I wasn't even expecting this. We're getting even more exploding goodness. Is that an eyeball popping out? Hold up. No. That's maybe. Hold up. Just all the explosions. You can see he's got his mouth is being blown up again. You can look at that. Oh, he's knocking his jaw. This is like when Deku smacked Shiggy in the face and shut the hell up. Just chunks of everything everywhere. This man is doing everything in his power. Something's off. My quirk factors aren't mingling properly. How could these mere fireworks be tearing them apart? Because my body's grown too young, too delicate? All those nasty negative emotions have got you in a tailspin, so you're losing control over us. Check it out. This joint is my fan meetup venue now. Oh my God. Swallowed up by Shigaraki, huh? So I figured the Hawks would come into play, but I like that the rebellion of the quirks. So this is what we call baby. So one of the things that my hero has talked about throughout the entire story is passing the fight from generation to generation. This is one of those things where we've kind of had it built up, and people were talking about the similarities to the second user and Bakugo aesthetically. In the last chapter, we had Horikoshi kind of set up this chapter to slap you in the face with it like a raw fish in a cartoon at the meat market. No. Bakugo is carrying the will forward from the rebellion against All for One, aside from being One for All itself for years. So this is the cool part, right? Is that us getting that flashback to provisional license. See, I'm kind of going on because there's so many little threads that make this moment great. Provisional license is basically where Bakugo and Deku are both acknowledged as successors via the will to save and the will to win, save to win to save, blah, blah, blah. So here we see the will of the second user, that journey being passed down to Bakugo, because the second user, he stood against All for One. He didn't necessarily have the best quirk in the series or best quirk in the world at that time. Bakugo's definitely got a substantially better quirk than Kudo, don't get me wrong here. But the thing that he did was he led a rebellion against All for One with an army of his own, taking those steps forward, did his best to free up and not stand in the way of and help and enable the first user, creating a space that made the first user get to live at least for 2 months. Whereas here, Bakugo standing against him, knowing that he technically shouldn't be as strong, etc., is able to help get these vestiges because of how unstable All for One is to rise up, leading towards the vestiges, representing the army of old, and Bakugo, their former general, while having Hawks basically be the wingman to it all because you see he's booed up with this girl. But hey, it is what it is. Get it straight. And then that's why you see like I'm pretty sure this is the arm that All Might gave him the gear for. Get it straight. This is our tale. And it's also worth noting that like he's first off, this is the grimiest mush in manga. He's just mushing this man. Just palm on the cheek, just ah. Except you can see the explosions going through his eyes. This is also why like explosion murder god. He's been talking about catching a body the whole series. And finally, we see him outright just explode somebody's face off. You got explosion coming out of the nostrils, explosion coming out of the jaw, which means there's a hole on the other side of his cheek. His ears are exploding. His eyeballs exploding. Little by little, the damage everyone dealt, all that built up, at long last. Let's see. It looks like that's even a cut to Yoichi cells. We're certain this time. Yeah. All for One is, yeah, I never could have hoped to beat that, at least not alone. Man, listen. This makes me wonder if he was aware that the vestige for Hawks would have been in there, but let me go ahead, send the link. See who is available or wants to come by today. Because that chapter was cooking in Spanish, dog. It was cooking in Spanish, big dog. Let me be real with you. Snippety diggity. There was that's what we read My Hero for, as far as I know. That kind of stuff right there, that action, that energy. All for One getting smacked into the ground. And like the thing is that we know he took damage. We know he was taking real substantial damage. And the thing about that is that what I like about this is that the Bakugo versus Melvin fight establishes a precedent where the only way you could consider it, an ass pull or whatever, etc., is if you just ignore the established precedent in the manga of Bakugo being able to damage Melvin. Because he did more damage than Sun Eater's laser. He had permanently scarred a piece of Melvin's face, causing him to go blind in one eye. Effectively, just boom. So to see the higher, more thoroughly upgraded body take a substantial amount of damage is like the key to making it believable for All for One, who was constantly regressing, who has become more fragile, to get his shit totally rocked by the explosion that we see here. And obviously, other people help. But still, the idea that he's taking these extra steps to make sure that All for One doesn't just get one shot. But yeah. Let's see. Or Bakugo's costume set says his knee patch. Oh yeah. And then let's see. Oh yeah, Bakugo's arm turned into a noodle in that last panel because he used the one that had the brace. It'd be wild if, like, all this time we spent theorizing that Deku would lose an arm, Bakugo ends up being the one that loses an arm. That'd be unhinged. But well, let's see. Kaminari hasn't lost anything yet. Bajiro lost an ear. So, and Kaminari still at least got a scar from the battle. We know that Tokoyami's gonna came out of the fight with Hawk or with Dabi pretty scarred. Momo doesn't have any scars yet. So my point is that the Baku band or the culture festival band, people all might come out of this war with some substantial uh injuries. But at the same time, this is the first time Bakugo's just straight up shattered his arm. So I feel like he's earned a recovery girl treatment. Hey, what up, Volk?
Okay. Uh, Sorry for the Joker moment there, but I was blown away this chapter. Bakugo broke his arm. I was so taken by the art I didn't really notice. Let me read it again. Where does he break his arm?
You can see it in the last page. His arm takes like a crazy. It almost looks like a smear frame, but we know that.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Oh, the fucking Deku limp licorice arm.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's kind of well,
yeah. That's gnarly, right?
yeah, that's perfect though, because like this whole fight, he was fighting like Deku at the start, just like constantly fucking himself up to do what needed to be done, right?
Yeah.
So it man, this chapter. Okay. I want to get into a couple things first. Because I did see some reactions ahead of time. Like people were saying, like, oh, what? Hori's being so inconsistent. It's like, what is he doing? Yada yada yada. One specific account I've seen who keeps up week to week, but simply does not internalize like very specific details were shown and told and given straight up. All for One is like literally falling apart. Okay. Like he's falling apart. They said it this chapter. It's like his body could not keep all of that together and possibly survive for more than a few seconds. So all Bakugo really had to do was avoid taking a direct hit. And what we saw with his sweat, and they've kind of been hinting at this all series long, right? That
Mm-hmm.
his sweat coats his body, and it's not it's so it so basically the angrier you make him, or the more you provoke him, the more powerful he's going to be. So now that he's had like these full body explosions, and sweat is secreted from the skin, the sweat glands. Not now that he can do it all over his body, he basically turned his pure DPS into defense. That's
Yep.
basically what he did this chapter. So when Off One first hits him, and it's like, what? Like, how is he still standing? It's like, I use my explosions, and his body is attuned to those explosions too. Like for like, how old is he? 17 years, almost 18 years now.
So
I think he's
you
eight.
you know what's crazy because we were talking about established precedent, right?
Yeah.
How did Bakugo overcome Shoto's opening move in the sports festival?
Oh right. He
He
just
exploded
wailed. Yeah, he
it. Like
just
he just
wailed away.
exploded the big ice wall as it was coming at him.
Yeah. That's one of the funniest out of context gifts to me. It's just like it's like
Yeah.
and that's basically and the howitzer impact, it's like I was predicting maybe it'd be like a contained nuclear explosion, and it sort of was, but it was more like a constant Gatling gun of pure and utter destruction. It was just like just kept going and kept wailing away at him. It was gorgeous. And his speed too. Bakugo is super fast now. I don't think people really internalize that because of like how abrupt his death was after that, and of course the revival and yada yada. We can keep going all day about how everybody feels about that, but it's like I think the way it's set up is just it's very like it's so feasible for Bakugo to be AFO. It's like it's actually kind of perfect how it went down. And also, people were complaining about the translation at the end of last week's chapter because, like, oh, Bakugo is talking about AFO being an idiot. He's not talking about himself. But then you see at the end of this chapter that he's talking about that what he was really talking about is how he could never beat AFO alone, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's just an affirmation of everybody's efforts up to that point, starting with Endeavor and Hawks. And by the way, it's very fitting because Hawks and AFO have been kind of trading barbs this whole arc because they're both pretty snarky. And so here at the end, you got the Hawks vested. She's just like, well, guess your own plan backfired on you. Shigaraki swallowed you up, didn't he?
Well, and that's the thing is that the only thing that would have made it better is like if he had somehow stolen Endeavor's quirk and Endeavor was also going to be like, well, at least I survived my fight with my son.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing that could have added more insult to this because you take all these quirks, you go out of this way to create, and even the last thing that like he's saying like while he's getting his ass beat is this is my story, you're an extra, you're which I also really really like how, and you guys brought this up multiple times in the past couple weeks. Bakugo and AFO sharing parallels because AFO shows parallels with Endeavor, and the people are willing to admit that Bakugo shares parallels with Endeavor. The fact that they both have this you extra mindset is one of the most fish slap moments from Horikoshi with like, no, I want you to look at the way that these two were driven by ego, they were driven by power, and I want you to actually acknowledge the value of them being able to look beyond themselves properly.
Yeah, dude. Like there are certain panels this chapter where AFO straight up looks like Nomu. Um, like there's the second to last spread where Bakugo's like frying his face.
Yeah.
And it looks exactly like when Hood was getting fried by Endeavor and he kind of being lit up from the inside. Like I compared the two side by side in a tweet, and it was just like it's. I think I very much think that's another intentional bit. It's like because AFO being so similar to Bakugo and kind of being like intentionally one dimensional of his own volition was very much, and we saw this with his interactions with Yuichi. It's very much a mirror to how Bakugo was at the very start. So similar to how Endeavor with Hood was him overcoming a manifestation of his previous weak self. This is Bakugo doing the same thing. And correspondingly, since it's the second biggest villain in the series, that's telling you this is the second biggest moment of the climax, right? Is him overcoming once and for all. And he starts this chapter without it's not they don't go straight into the action. And I think another author would be tempted to go straight into the action, but what Horikoshi starts with first and foremost is the relationship with Deku, because you get these little flashbacks to key beats where he's like, "I'm gonna make this power my own. I'm gonna rise on my own skill," and then he ends that as like, "I'm not gonna get in your way anymore, Izuku." And it's that's essentially him finally acknowledging that he's not going to let any of that pride, because even after the apology, he was kind of like having trouble kind of acknowledging certain things. Right. And this is him fully saying, I'm not letting that affect me anymore. I'm not going to let any of that insecurity get in the way of my potential as a hero, your potential as a hero. And it was great because it was really all up to Bakugo in the end with regards to their relationship. As like he was really the one who screwed things up. So him having to slowly learn that and acknowledge that to the point where it was affecting both of their potential futures as heroes is him saying, I've put that previous week Bakugo behind. I am not like AFO who cannot admit his own flaws. I'm gonna overcome my flaws. I'm gonna be a better hero for it, and my friends are gonna be a better hero for it too. That's such a great message.
And I think a lot of people understand that up until it's time to like, because it's weird because like I feel like our this fandom sometimes doesn't want to take like the bad traits of the characters that they like with the good,
Mm-hmm.
but it's because of those bad traits that all the good things that we can say about Bakugo, like actively making the choice to not be like AFO, etc., so powerful. Because if Momo's like, I'm not gonna be like you all for one, who gives a damn? Like if Momo could be, I'm not gonna be like you all for what? No, you were never like him. You were some super sweet rich girl who wanted to do things properly. Like you're by the book. Shut up. Like the most like there you have to have the capacity for evil to make the choice for being good to have value in a story. Like if the
So
character is just a straight laced super stickler, like even if Deku said I'm not going to be like you all for one, it doesn't mean the same as Bakugo taking those steps and making those decisions to not operate in the same way. It just inherently doesn't.
would Endeavor be Endeavor if he didn't do what Endeavor had did?
No, he would not ease. It's good to see you're here and early at that.
I got limited time. I'm only here until like 12:40. But you know what? I got Volk here, so really I could just slide back out. You know what I'm saying?
No. You ain't getting away, little rat. So caught in the trap now, but no scary.
Damn, I knew I should have stuck to my last tolerance. There we go. Hey, don't you start in the chat, big head.
No, go ahead, big head.
Don't you damn start.
So
If I said that 5 times fast, I don't think none of y'all be able to keep up. Hey, what's up? That's little.
and we got Joseph in the building.
What's up, Joseph? What's up, Volk?
All right, East, because I know you just said you're on limited time. So let's hear first off, give them what they miss.
What did y'all miss? I don't know.
You know what they miss.
What's up? What's up, Denzel? What's up? I can't believe you done this.
Give them a proper greeting, East. You gonna do them like that?
All right. Y'all know what time it is, right? I tried to give y'all a second before I got down. You know what?
Hey,
Hell to you! What going on? And we back with it once again. Man, hello, how y'all doing? What's up, solo me? What's up, Cameron Bailey? You know what I'm saying? Fuck going on? Happy to be back with y'all. Y'all know, bricked up for the East, for life, for the nation. You know, man, goddamn. It's so fucking funny, man. It's like you said, it's like, well, I honestly, once again, it just goes back to I wish this nigga had really just took like either did the Tabata route or the Gege route type shit. Took a damn fucking break and just like damn, because when he went to reach that bag of artistry and he got health in his system, ain't nobody tell this nigga do all this goddamn art.
So, you know what was crazy for me when you say that is that he's hovering that 15-page mark, you know, like he said him and Jump talked about. But this chapter feels like a crazy amount of like high octane action and art with an actual good amount of dialogue. If this chapter actually feels like a good amount is happening in it. And usually when you have a chapter with as much fighting as we have, like, all right, so yeah, there's this trap that he set, blah, blah, blah. Like, but there's like this actual, like, instead of us feeling like we had to pick one or the other, we actually just got both because you get a good chunk of like trash talk, you get awesome action spreads, you get some of the best action shots in the entire series. Like this almost makes up for all the ways that people joke about how Bakugo didn't get to fight real villains most of the series. Because like
I do think he was sidelined a little too much, but it's like, oh, it's just okay. So basically, he has a PLW fight, which is pretty great. Although that is more of a team effort. He has Shigefo, which honestly is pretty fun overall. And then you have this, which is just pure insanity. And just like for me, just what stood out was like the comp how well basically how panels were drawn and composited. Like just like there's this one where you're kind of seeing All for One's Omni Factor unleashed from like the top down, and you see all these faces popping out as he rushes towards Bakugo. It's just absolutely stunning. I think that's the second spread.
Yeah, page 6 to 7.
Yeah, page 6 to 7. It's just yeah. Oh, no wonder he took a couple extra breaks because this was just. Okay,
And
I know people rag on the anime, but like I have a feeling this is one they are gonna pop up for because it's just like one of the absolute craziest sequences in the manga.
if I'm honest, I've said it before. I'm gonna say it again. This is not a popular take. This isn't one that I see people saying a lot, but I really, truly want season 7 and 8. Like I want there to be season 7 and season 8, and I want season 7 to end when Deku and Shigaraki are standing there with the lightning flash.
That's actually perfection, honestly.
Like I know so many people are like, but what if we get to this, or maybe we can toss like an extra 10, 15. That's just because one, that leads to them only covering about like 50 chapters, which season 2 only covered about like 50 chapters. So it's not like a 50 chapter season is going to automatically just be ass. Slow down the pacing a bit, expand on some of these fights, let them have a little creative freedom with some of these fights. Nobody's going to complain about getting more of the Shoto versus Dabi round 1. Like nobody's going to be upset about that.
See, my thing about that too is I don't know if that tweet that Carrie or people had dropped in the Discord was actually confirmed that the studio that was working on, I believe Mob shipped it over, or some of the staff shipped it over to help out.
That wasn't really true. It's
okay.
Like they help each other. They help each other out a lot because it's like they're all part of the same company ultimately. But it's like Bones are also they have this new female-led show in January. They just announced an adaptation as a tribute to an author who died, who had wanted his manga series to be adapted. So it's like you have to understand Studio C has a pretty dedicated team for it on MHA. In fact, the guy who animated the Toto sequence in the last JJK episode, he's becoming an MHA regular now. Kohei Hirota is his name.
That's the monster that did the last JJK episode.
Yeah, he did. He's done cuts for One Piece and Spy Family. I think he kind of entered the industry with MHA, and MHA is his favorite one, from what I understand.
Well, the inspiration was in that Toto scene, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean his pseudonym that he used for the animation in the JJK episode was Koichi Akihiro. Now let's break down that last name, Akihiro. Is there any similar sounding portmanteau in Japanese that you can think of?
No, man, it's kind of. I mean, it's like it feels like I can remember something. It resonates, but I'm just not sure.
Hiroaka.
I think Aniki knows.
Aniki, you know that's the question.
Akihiro. Hero Academia. Oh my God, it's My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
Yep.
Same here.
Anarchy, I don't know if you noticed, but there was a super chat from Mr. Andrew.
Yeah,
and
I was gonna get that.
Yeah.
I think it needs a nerd voice too.
Yeah, it does. Corey is so washed. The writing is piss poor, and the art is okay, but due to no hand-to-hand, makes it piss poor. No dead bodies, no sauce, no brain cells, and Mom, I don't have any pizza rolls.
Calling out who, I wonder.
Yeah, Tyler, same here. I'm going in with like minimal expectations, but I don't see. For me, the anime been like that. Listen, after watching like other series and shit and seeing a lot of things, I'm like, I don't feel like y'all had the passion back then. I dead ass feel or argue like y'all got Bones got real comfortable with MHA sitting at the status that it is on its own.
So my thing is that
listen, bro. The last time.
Hold on, Squid. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm glad you're here. Welcome, Squid. But I want to get this out. I don't think it's necessarily a matter of passion, because we also got to factor in something very important. Mappa working they people like slaves.
You see, I was thinking about that too when I was walking. I was
All
like,
whip, no chains.
When I was walking, I was like, you know, MHA, they're like Bones ain't got these niggas starving in the street like that. They ain't got these niggas working like dogs. And I was like, obviously we need to change the formula. And somebody need to take somebody else's formula. Yeah. I'm not gonna say who need to copy who. That's up to y'all to decide with your own morals. You know
okay, like, and here's the other thing. Like people point to like the Mukai seasons being like, oh, the dip in quality is like when Nagasaki left, things were just different. I'm gonna be entirely honest with you. I've been rewatching the show, and these are not. There's not that gap in quality that everybody has insisted there were. I think people were very taken with the first 3 seasons because it was exciting and new. And you kind of saw a shift with season 4 where other stuff was kind of on the rise. And I think a lot of anime fans, whether they admit it or not, just kind of wanted to be the cool kids now. And they didn't
it's important to note that MHA has never gotten to be the cool kid. Like it's gotten to grow in popularity, but there has always been a massive amount of pushback against MHA, like always. And when you mention season 4, I think people pretend like season 4 didn't have Dekuverse overhaul that had the shit was viral at like 7 a.m. Central Time in the US because people were hitting the Harlem Shake over the way that he got One Punch Man overhauls kaiju form. I think people are forgetting like the same thing that happened with Endeavor.
That's what I was just about to bring up.
Like, and here's the thing is that anime only fans, when they saw Recipro Burst last for 10 minutes, were going crazy on the timeline. The Bakugo chase down sequence on Joint Training, season 5, Core 2 having delays and issues due to COVID, and the production committee swapping the order of the episodes is the only thing that really messed it up.
Right.
Because during Joint Training, the only people who were pissed in the anime were people who wrongly decided that Joint Training would only last or wouldn't take up the entire first core. Those are the only people who were mad. And because people kept saying like, oh, MVA's coming, MVA's coming, MVA's coming, once their expectations were not met, boom, done.
I think a lot of it also is Western fans in particular are they very much associate dark with good. And I mean, okay, like that's not fair. I think that is a global universal human thing. Like we associate dark with good because we associate dark with being mature. And then meanwhile, you cut over to like some fuck shit manga that's treats women terribly or has extremely ridiculous sex scenes and really crude just scenarios, because there are a lot of manga like that. Those are dark, but they're not good.
Yeah.
Hold on, boy.
Also, I got to real quick hit both these
Have you
super
ever
chats just out
considered
of
that
respect.
maybe that their fans are a big boy who don't need no parents? Have you ever considered that?
Like, first off, Terrence Bernard came through. I repeat, but your fave mangaka is begging to be Hori's Kohai. We are not the same. And I want to make it very clear that the post 2014 Jump roster is full of Horikoshi dick riders. The most successful people post 2014, like the most successful post MHA writers that are still writing in the magazine are Horikoshi fans.
Mama Yu straight up just drops AFO on you like 9 chapters in.
Like,
Oh yeah, I call them all full one, FAUX.
Terrence Bernard came through. Production of Kill la Kill needs to be studied.
Man,
Kill la Kill is one of the most beautifully done series. Oh my goodness. I've ever had the pleasure of witnesses. That and Gurren Lagann just beautifully done. Just
Yes.
animation
please
is
don't talk
just
about one of
insane.
my favorite
Fiction.
things ever.
Peak fiction.
Peak fiction right there.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, with the whole Mappa thing, it's like JJK's production.
Mr. Andrew came in with what a lot
Has
of
been
people
like
in the community
really
feel.
like tumultuous yeah, but it's also like even if it like there's a lot of consequences when you're overworking staff that much. Like Mappa's working like the JJK staff for more hours than they are in a day. They're making up imaginary time to keep them working, man. It's crazy. So it's like eventually production is gonna crash because this is just unsustainable. So
Also,
I'd rather have sustainable production than something that can only be kept for such a short amount of time.
Exactly. That's why they go on break after we finish slaving and working like Hebrew slaves, like the niggas that built the pyramids. And then when they go on their little break and see their families for like 1 month, we get them back in the lab and start whipping their backs and their feet. And if somebody step out of line, we threaten their families and they get to working harder. And then you get episodes like last episode. It's quite a simple.
But my thing is that like with
Hold
the
up.
whole, but like for example with the episode 2 weeks ago, the Mahoraga one, they were only able to do like 30% of their original vision because of the deadlines and stuff like that. It was still fire and gas and peak, but it's also like we're missing out on like their best efforts, even though they're what they're saying is, their lesser efforts is really good. We're losing, I think, what could be like truly like ridiculous to this.
So you want them niggas to rest and see their family? What I'm hearing is a bunch of lazy Western American mindset. We work over here in the East. We work like slaves night and day. We work on older schedule. We sleep 3 hours. We sleep 3 hours a day, and that's it.
No, that's too. No, that's too much time. You get like 3 minutes at most, and like a 30-second nap. Come on, I'll be realistic.
Hold on, I gotta hit y'all with Andrew's super chat because he's covering the bases here.
I
don't know, guys. If treating animators like slaves means we get really pretty colors and shiny moving pictures, then go ahead. It's not like it involves me. And I'll worry about the job application next week, Mom. Jeez, leave me alone. I'm busy.
I'm busy.
Okay, I've seen those takes floating around, and it's just like it's such a lack. It's just such a deliberate lack of employing any sort of empathy or understanding, or even understanding how anime production cycles operate. Because if you are saying that this is the only way to create great looking content, then maybe you have to rethink the way you're making great looking content. Does that not sound more productive?
I think no. Here's my thing, right? If you think that the only way you can lead a project with like good quality, whether it's animation or business or anything, under like unsustainable conditions, I genuinely think you shouldn't be a project manager.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
hey, guess
also-
what? I got a reality check for you. That's about half the world. A little bit more than half.
And that's why
I mean,
those
there's
companies
a lot of
live-
inefficient business done in the world, but okay.
That's why those companies exist as a company in one place to put their factories in another.
Yeah,
with the sole
outsourcing.
intent of not having to be efficient and have sustainable conditions and treat people well. Like, there's a reason why, like, so time for your Church of MHA corner, where we discuss things around the globe. So, one of these neat little tricks that like Nike and some of these other companies do is they find a village that has low quality of life. And we may have even talked about this like once, maybe a year or two ago.
No money, no bag, no drip, just absolute bad conditions.
It's true. They dripless. But they'll have like really basic like farming or something like that. So what they do is they go here and they pay these people peanuts in any Western country, but still big dick player in their neck of the woods. And what ends up happening is that they chill there. These people's quality of life goes up and up and up because they can like finally like invest in more infrastructure, so maybe they have better irrigation for farming and all this other stuff and all the. But the trade-off is that they've made 150 of the LeBron, like every LeBron James jersey you see in your local Foot Locker was made by some kid named Hamadouli, and it was all done in a single day. And you know, each athlete's jersey, that was all one nigga. Like, boom. Oh, you see 20 jerseys? That was all that one kid. You see 20 jerseys? That was another kid. And all that was made that day for about $10. And
they're putting up Hall of Fame numbers for rookie pay.
So then what happens is that those people, as they get more money and they, you know, have more time to think and less time to worry about survival, they start being, you know, we're doing pretty well, but like, if they can pay all of us this, they can probably pay us a bit more. And then, so then what happens is those factories operate 5-10 years, increase like how much money those people have, their quality of life temporarily. And then once they're like, you know what, maybe we should be getting paid a little better because they finally like bought a cell phone, went online and saw that 50 cents a day in a USD is fucking bullshit. Then the factory, all right, off to greener pastures, quite literally, because wherever they go, there's going to be another like back end village with way more greenery than there is concrete. But that's the strategy. You just kind of hop around and you do this over and over and over again. And that's kind of the same level of like, and so it's not as manipulative, but what it is that it's coercive because at the end of the day, like if you want to be an animator, if this is the job that's going to make you happy, a lot of these companies know that like you have limited options. A lot of these people talk to each other. All industries are boys clubs, like just places where people just kind of chat, and that you know, you're gonna get a referral. People are gonna have friends at first. Like when you hear about a lot of how stuff is made in like artistic fields, like okay, for example, I've been replaying Kingdom Hearts 1, partially to my wife's dismay, because she is not a Kingdom Hearts enjoyer. But I will brainwash her into being one.
You have my support.
Enjoy Kingdom Hearts.
Don't matter.
Yeah. That was a chant, but that game exists because like one random Square Enix employee and a Disney employee were in an elevator together and had to go up like 40 flights. So he straight up elevator pitched a Final Fantasy Disney crossover. And we got one of the greatest gaming franchises to ever grace this earth.
Made him a lot of money too.
But like all of the like these productions companies and their clubs, like it's about opportunity. That's why, in like if you ever work a corporate job or anything like that, you have to go to at least some of the outings. If you do not, you are setting yourself up for failure.
I mean, facts, but this is also how it works in the STEM field as well.
Yeah, it's all like every company ends up a boys club because what happens is or like in STEM, like let's say, you know, you're working for Apple for 15 years and you've picked up enough coding that you want to create an application. So you go start your own personal app company, you pull like 4 Apple employees with you. Now, as your app expands, different Apple employees might want to go there, or like some of your guys, and they go to another company. But now you guys have like these 3, 4, 5, 6 tech companies that are all connected, all know each other. And so the second your name pops up and it's like, oh, they used to work at that company. Oh, well, I can just call my boy Tyrone and see what he thinks. Or I'll call Blake and see what he thinks. And like you end up with these crazy chains of connection because success breeds success. And then, you know, the iron sharpens iron, blah, blah, blah. But like what it just ends up happening is that it snowballs and eventually people just get frozen out. And the same thing even applies to kind of in sports, but it's definitely starting to impact certain esports where sometimes like the games people don't get into top level teams because they just don't have the friends.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden you may be a really good player, but somebody played with you in solo queue and you were annoying, so they don't ever want to they don't ever want to let you get into the game.
I can actually
get onto a pro team.
honestly,
That's it. If you're done so.
I can actually give you an example of an esports example that at least I follow. So I actually watch a lot of fighting games, particularly Street Fighter, and the newest one, Street Fighter 6. There's a pro league in the US. There's a team on there in that league that has 3 out of the 4 players are considered top 5 in the world. And the weakest player is considered top 5 in America. No one else has anywhere near that quality outside of like one team, and that's like one dude that's like on that top 5 in the world level. So it's like a lot of this connections to like top team stuff is happening not just in like league or anything like that. It's also happening in other sports as well.
Somebody told you to check this. You're not wrong. That is very correct, Andrew. One of my best ghostwriter.
And also, Aniki, when it comes to the like tech industry, another thing that can happen is like, let's say you start up your company, right? And you're getting all these employees. What can happen is Apple can like try to buy you as a subsidiary and now have you under their brand of technology, which is another very common thing that happens. That's how you keep a monopoly over tech and tech IPs. So, you know, that's a very real problem that causes a lot of issues because there's a lack of competition. And we're seeing this not just in, you know, cell phone companies, we're seeing this in networks. Like, there's a lot of problems created when there's a lack of competition.
They can't legally buy each other anymore, but they can buy everybody who starts.
Yeah, Rockefeller kind of ruined that. So
crazy as hell. But
I want to address that one guy's thing because that one guy asked, I've been thinking about getting into Kingdom Hearts. Is it as complicated / convoluted as people say, or is it just a meme that went out of context?
No.
Out of control. I think the best answer I can give you is it's a little bit of both.
I always say that it is a simple story that was told in the most convoluted way possible because it originally came out on every single system imaginable, and there are no side games. Every single game develops the plot. So people coming in at different points in the story.
And only now is Nomura kind of forced to stop doing that because I think what we're gonna get is a numbered entry and then a not numbered entry in between them from now on.
So
and
I'm gonna we go
because game development is just so much different now. And in fact, like Kingdom Hearts 4, people are speculating it looks like it's gonna have a Star Wars world. It has like it has an urban city center that's just directly ripped from the early prototypes of Final Fantasy Versus 13. Might have a Marvel world at this point. That's a lot to get right, honestly.
So the reason why I'm going to say it's a bit of both, though, is that yes, I agree that the release order because all right. If I get this wrong, somebody correct me, but I think I remember the release order correctly. So here we go. I'm not going to talk about. So just winding up to this, you can kind of tell why I say it's like a little bit of both. So you have Kingdom Hearts 1, initial game of the series. It's the one that I'm currently playing. We're at Hollow Bastion, but first game. Second game is Chain of Memories. It has a remake called Re-Chain of Memories that was released for the PS2 in 2008. It is also available in the Kingdom Hearts Final Mix collection that is now available on PlayStation 4, Xbox One. Probably can get it on your PS5. I don't know for sure.
Nah,
Steam,
hold on.
whatever.
Hold on. I know a paid nigga when I see one. This nigga was bought by Square Enix, y'all. Hold on. Why are you talking about? Yeah, so technically you can get it in this collection over here if you were to purchase it.
They bought me out too, man.
You can get a 20%
FF7
discount
right now.
if you use this code.
So look, hey, but look, Square, if you wanna give me money, you know, just shoot my emails on my Twitter bio. I'm just saying, you know, I'll take that check. Anyway,
the bag is eternal. The bag is eternal. The
you have Chain of Memories. Chain of Memories. So the thing about Chain of Memories is that it originally came out on the Game Boy Advance. So a lot of people didn't actually play Chain of Memories. So they went from Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts 2. Kingdom Hearts 2 starts you off after Chain of Memories. It is a direct sequel to both games. So Chain of Memories you can technically skip, but there ends up being details about the franchise and what's going on that you just will not have.
Like the actual villains are introduced in Chain of Memories. Like
yeah, so it's like there's stuff that you won't get, like the nobodies and the organization, but like they're not called Organization 13 until Kingdom Hearts 2, so it's okay that you don't know that their organization is Organization 13. But like you see these guys with these black hoods, and you kind of get to figure out some other stuff that's going on. But like so, Kingdom Hearts 2, you're introduced to these nobodies and all this other stuff. Oh, I guess Kingdom Hearts 1 is about the Heartless. By the way, I should have mentioned that. So then, after Kingdom Hearts 2, Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days comes out. Not 358 divided by 2. 358 over 2 days comes out. And that is a betweenquel that actually takes place during the same timeline as Chain of Memories. But it exists to give you further contextualization to the nobody of Sora, who is Roxas. Roxas was introduced to people who skip Chain of Memories and in general in Kingdom Hearts 2. But you get these like cutscenes, you don't know what they're teasing. And Kingdom Hearts 2, by the way, had this crazy ass cutscene at the end where these people were in the armor and all this other shit. It was like, oh my god, yeah, let's go crazy. And then it ends up being like, people like, Kingdom Hearts, we're going to have armor. We're going to be at this Keyblade graveyard. There's all these Keyblades everywhere. It's going to be sick. And then it's like, no, that's actually for. Oh, by the way, Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days is on the Nintendo DS.
This nigga is a paid sponsor.
So then Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep comes out, which is another spinoff, but it's actually a prequel series to even Kingdom Hearts 1, and that came out on the PSP. That is also a part of the Kingdom Hearts Final Mix collection set now. So then you get Kingdom Hearts Recoded, which was like a fucking phone mobile game that you could play.
That got ported to the DS.
Hey, before we get too far away from it though, I just want to talk about how goddamn I remember the end cutscene where it was fucking, you know, Terra and all them actually fighting Xehanort and I forgot Vanitas fucking in his fucking thing. And it was funny because you know how much that was like, you know, back on YouTube, you know, nobody was a source checker like that for facts like it is now. Yeah. You know how many niggas was fooled to believe that was like Kingdom Hearts 3?
Bro, because that's what people were like. People like Kingdom Hearts 3 trailer.
That shit's crazy. Oh, I got 10 minutes left.
If you like YouTube that shit, it would say Kingdom Hearts 3 trailer. So you had.
I got 10 minutes left.
Recoded. Dream Drop Distance, which was also on the 3DS. 2.8.
I'm good, Denise. What about you?
And then 3. But yeah. Basically, the games were released out of order. It's a lot easier to follow along with now. But you got to make sure you don't skip cutscenes and stuff like that. And that's the best way to make sure, like, don't try to skip cutscenes. Make sure you read the secret reports and stuff as you unlock them, because there's journal pages and stuff like that you get that help flesh out stuff. I would say that Dark Souls lore, I would say, isn't as complex, but it's a lot harder to access, which makes it feel more complex. Because Dark Souls lore, you don't
here's my thing
a lot of cutscenes for you, end up like just reading random shit off of items and stuff like that. So like the accessibility to the lore is what makes Dark Souls lore complicated.
Yeah, it's definitely more like esoteric to like find, but like when you actually look at the content, like outside of like some, I guess, grammar, it's like, or like maybe the way they structure like their sentences and stuff like that is very kind of simple to read. Like,
It's like,
I did this in
I,
like
I,
this era, and then you talk to another character. It's
yeah, I think
item.
it's like approaching too, because it's like how you digest it. Because if it's like if let's say we got like let's say we got fucking eating contest, right, or whatever, and we got to eat like fucking 200, like a 20-pound burger and the sides to it. It's depending on how you go about doing this such thing. Like it's the same meal in that sort of sense, but it's about how you go about doing it. Is the way you get to the end result. So like Dark Souls doesn't just lay out this X, Y, Z. This is the story. This is the lore. This is why this is that. You have to kind of piece it together. And Kingdom Hearts is a little bit more straightforward, kind of convoluted too at times. But then again, it's not just Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, 3. Is this game connected to this game? This is a prequel to this game, and this game was that. And that Black Clover, then that was it Kingdom Hearts X cover shit, X Clover shit, and that was like a little side game on top of that. So it was just like the story can be told. If the story is told very linearly, it's very dense, same as Dark Souls. But then again, it's just about piecing all the factors together. With Kingdom Hearts, with Dark Souls, you have to go reach all the information and come back around and piece it together. Whereas Kingdom Hearts is like you have to play all these fucking exclusions and like, inclusions and side offs. That's not really side offs. It's actually matters to the story in order to get everything, because it's kind of told in and out of order for a reason. And sometimes it's just doing too much. But I guess that's up to you and your interpretation of how you feel, type shit.
Mhm.
Some
Now, do
people
you know
like
what
crazy.
lore is really
People like
hard to
crazy bitches.
follow?
Some
Sorry.
people don't. You got it. It's all you.
You know what hard is? Oh, you know what lore is actually pretty hard to follow? The Nier franchise. If you uh
Oh, Nier is
you're a
just
fan of,
edgy. Nier is just edgy Kingdom Hearts.
yeah, I mean
Oh,
basically, but there's also like way more stuff to follow. Like for example, there's
no.
lore in a play that was released in Japan, so you have to like watch the play through like a YouTube video to like understand some things. It's pretty funny how deep the lore goes. But yeah.
Right, Tunisia, and then again, we still might get lost. You might end up like Zoro, even with the GPS. Goddamn, you still might end up like GPS. But yeah, my time is running out. I've got about 4 minutes left, so I'll cut back to MHA real quick. I know you had like the side quest. I enjoy the side quest conversation too, but you know, got things to do.
Let's get your
But
final thoughts, East.
yeah, overall, I wanted to briefly touch about this part. It's funny how like this all coming full circle, and that punk ass bird is still playing a good important role. Talking about something, oh, you took my quirk, but you know it was easy to me to rally up all these people that don't like your punk ass for all the shit you did. I forgot. I think that one guy was talking about it before. How off one always talks about his individuality, this that, and the other, and how he's all him and he's all I'm all me, all this type of shit. And then it comes back. I can't remember your exact thing, but you were talking about how like he was saying all this shit, and it's funny that him talking about his individuality, him being on his own, this and the other, him taking everything else from everybody else's individuality is what made him the sum whole of whatever the fuck he is. I forgot how exactly how you said it, that one guy. I'm pretty sure that was you that said it, but basically how you talked about that, I was like, that was very much interesting. And once again, how correct factors play for it. I don't think I really like expanded upon, or I would have liked to touch upon more how like or have a conversation about how there are literal spirits and shit of your ancestors or previous users or your predecessors in your body and cognizant. Like that's so interesting to me how like each cell factor contains like a soul. Like I think like that deserves like a deeper dive discussion, but another time for another day type shit. Honestly, chapter was gas. I like Volk said, I'm happy that Bakugo really got this runs back. But what was more interesting is once again using future sight and taking one thing and using it for another. So using this as example, Bakugo is that when that nigga got bodied, he was like, all right, Bakugo got hold. He ain't getting shit. We don't want him to beating Shigaraki because Shigaraki's supposed to be ultra life from this and the other. One of the main issues I had was that Shigaraki wasn't getting the proper screen time like he was supposed to because Shit for one was getting his ass beat. Mainly All for One because he was in control. And Shiraki let that happen. That was Shiraki getting his ass beat. Then Shiraki Ultimate Life Form, the ultimate unstoppable force, I always still felt like he should have been the one to get all this last bit of screen time being unstoppable and to prompt Deku up even more so. But how All for One was the one getting to like body everyone in the way, but at the same time he was still taking damage and all these people kept trying to stop him, but he just kept going. But in the end, he was still reverting back until we get to this point where we're at now. Now I still stand by this theory. It will be baby or child, really child All for One. But I can't wait for the parallel when Shigaraki reaches his hand out to baby off one, but dusts that nigga instead of trying to take that nigga like the Uno reverse card, because it's really time for this nigga to step up and body him. So I cannot wait for that specific event to happen. But also another factor is that I also realized that another important role will most likely be Shigaraki dealing with Kirakumo and Kirigiri and all of them, because I know they're gonna have to come back at some point and shit. And I would like definitely to see the ending conclusion to that reaction, how Shigaraki feels about that. So there are, so from a power standpoint, Shigaraki didn't get the flex on everybody, but it's still peak to be delivered between him and Deku boxing out, because Deku need to get his ass whooped and he can make his whole anime comeback as they usually do. But he need to get the pause put on that nigga. Dead ass. There's no exception to the rule. He need pause put on him. He gonna have to earn this one. For real, for real. So
I got a question.
Yo.
So I know you hate Hawks, right? So I gotta ask you this. Do you think it's a fitting punishment for Hawks to work at Mappa after all this is done?
I mean, he don't need to. He don't really need to, because he gonna have to step up as a hero and the safety commission leader with no quirk. And the amount of work he gonna have to be doing in order to get the society back after they fucked the entire goddamn country of Japan up. It was already fucked before. Now after this whole blast out, like nigga, there's construction that needs to be done. That's all type of shit that need to be done. Then they have to fix the system and all this, that, and other. So the rate he gonna be working, he gonna be like how Naruto was working to a bone and don't stop working. He ain't gonna see his family. He ain't gonna try to see Enji like that. So you know it's a finished punishment. He might as well be working that map as far as I'm concerned. So he don't need to go nowhere else. What's up? Bitch ass nigga. But anyway, that is all for me. I have to go because I have shit to do. Luckily, you have another great person who has great conversation and great thoughts, and that would be Seb. Welcome on to the show. And as I sign off, once again, thank you all for joining us for greatness, for peak. I love y'all all. I will see y'all maybe not. I don't think we don't. Y'all know what I'm gonna say next week. Whenever the fuck we come back.
Yeah, no, 2-week break.
Yeah, but I don't have. If I'm here, I'm not. Y'all know where to fucking catch me any day of the week. If you need anything, hit my line. But hell to you, hell Hori, and I'm gonna fuck with y'all. Thank y'all for joining us. It's undefeated at the East, baby. What it do? And I hope all y'all have a great day.
Praise the Lord.
Oh my God. Have a great one, East. Good morning, everyone.
All right, so I know you were a little disappointed that you missed it last week. So, have you been? What have been your thoughts lately in general? Let's get a general rundown on the past couple chapters from you.
That's kind of an overwhelming way to open the discourse because oh my gosh. But no, seriously, I couldn't ask for a better intro. Thank you so much, East. Have a great night. Sunday. Anyways, gosh.
Praise the Lord.
So the All for One chapters were really special. Like we know that Horikoshi can kind of work magic with anyone given enough focus. It's really impressive. But that backstory was a really cool way how he's juxtaposed as having been born with nothing. It's such an interesting insight to his character. It's not that it fleshes him out to be like someone you like, but it's someone you can at least sort of understand what is driving him. But it's nothing that I mean, yeah, you don't sympathize with him for sure. But I'm sure you guys like talked all about that last time and stuff. So I don't want to retread old ground so much. It's just it is a really cool way to humanize a main antagonist. It seems quite evident that he's not the main antagonist, at least not anymore. Yeah, so this was a really great way to both build him up and tear him down. I was pretty satisfied to see Bakugo wreck him. It was almost unceremonious, just given how like quickly it ultimately went down between him and Bakugo, but at the same time it also felt really fitting. Just he thought he was all that, but actually no, this high schooler over here had something to say. So I enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to the anime team popping off with it. as far as like his backstory goes, I remember being really surprised at seeing what happened to N. He got like completely bisected, but he's handing off his power to Nana with a smile anyway, and that just informs me a lot about Nana, just the things that she ended up valuing um as a result of her relationship with him. However, uh, however small that might have been, like it just does a lot with a little, and that's what Horikoshi is pretty good at. Um, let's see. Um, I don't think All for One's mom, she might be the mother of all quirks. That's a very interesting thought, but I think it's cool that it remains in the realm of mysticism, kind of, or legend or myth or however you want to call it. Like I know people would really like to see an arc, a prequel arc, and of course I would too. But I also think part of the appeal is that kind of vague, what's going on kind of thing. So I think like
not everything needs to be answered rule, which I actually
yes,
subscribe to.
yes, because like once you go through it all, it kind of loses that, mysterious edge or whatever to it. And it's like we kind of do know enough, is my thought. So it could be its own entertaining drama, but I'm just so happy we saw AFO get decapitated, like literally have his cap removed. Like I am so happy we got to see the face he sees in his nightmares. That was such a cool thing to drop during their first fight, but we never actually like saw what AFO saw. So I am so happy we got that.
The ultimate capper got his cap removed. That's a bar when you think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was so good. And before that too, I was nervous about the Bakugo Kudo connection, but I'm glad it just stayed fairly simple and not dramatic. It's just that they share the same will kind of thing, and I'm good with that. I'm good with that. And it was just mostly a segue to All for One's backstory, so I think that just worked. Overall, it could have been more cringe than it may have been for some people, but for me, it was fine. Gosh, yeah. So no, how's everyone? Anything in specific going on right now? I like what is like your all's biggest takeaway from these past couple chapters?
For me, it's the All for One backstory. He just like me for real. Actually, nah, I'm joking. But one thing I like that something that Horikoshi does is that I think one of the things he's really good at is explaining how the environment someone was born in forms their emotional development, and how we know quirks influence personalities, but we also know personalities influence quirks. So the same way Tenko, due to his decay quirk, has that urge to um, decay something, the All for One naturally has an impulse to take. But then what happens when you take someone who already has kind of a very, kind of antisocial trait, and then you put them into an environment where their worst impulses are repeatedly justified? And I think All for One is the answer to that very interesting question.
Well
Because
said.
we
Yeah.
see throughout the story, family plays an important role. So when the ultimate symbol of evil is to be someone who had no real guidance figure and pretty much had to form their own morality in a very, violent and impoverished situation, um, you end up creating, you end up creating a monster. I believe this was I forget which philosopher. It was either Socrates or it was no, it was Aristotle, but he had this quote that man in society, when one is divorced from society, they become either a god or an animal. And, All for One is the result of being divorced from that social connection his entire life. Deprived of, shelter, education, food. We see that in the flashbacks, he's visibly malnourished. And it's like when someone has lived as an outcast of society so long, then it's possible that they never really developed that empathy needed to be a part of a collective. And
Yeah.
that's what I think All for One ultimately serves as in terms of his personality. He's the ultimate example of selfishness. You know, in a class analysis, you could say All for One kind of represents this idea of, a bourgeoisie, like, capitalists that just constantly want to take and extract and exploit. And it's ultimately rooted by that feeling that is the divorce from empathy and social connection, from the devaluing of human life. So ultimately, I think his backstory is not only very thematically coherent, it also connects a lot of his character together. So those two things are done, I think, extremely well. So that's my thoughts on All for One's backstory.
Yeah, no, that was really well said. You reminded me of All for One's appearance, and obviously his eyes stand out a whole lot just because how just they're like their own void. And I love
Mhm.
how you can project inward and outward with that because he doesn't see people the way that, someone with empathy might see people. And on the flip side, it's like on the inside of All for One, there's like this literal void where he, having been born in his situation, there is like nothing. So it like you see it in his appearance, and that's what's really strong and fun about animes because sometimes someone looks exactly as they are. Sometimes it's inverted. Sometimes they play with that, but like it's that kind of visual storytelling that I think was so strong. And obviously Horikoshi contrasted that with Kudo very well too, with the look in Kudo's eyes. But
Which
Kudo's eyes, they also contrast. There's also the thematic contrast where he can see what the worth of another person. He saw the worth, for example, in All for One's younger brother, in a way that All for One couldn't. And we actually see that. We see what Yoichi looks like in both of their eyes. So it's just a really cool way Horikoshi can play with Horikoshi does his storytelling, and it's simple and really effective.
I kind of want to highlight something that you pointed out here, though, is that when you talk about how sometimes the designs are inverted, and specifically, I want to talk about All for One's face for a second because
yeah,
when we talk about the exploitative nature and like how he does kind of function as like a capitalist. I mean, the dude's standard uniform was literally a business suit, right?
Yeah.
It's important to note that normally, like, and like with his eyes, it does play into how he doesn't see people, but ultimately, like his face being mush and all that other stuff, kind of like normally it's like nebulous in how they look at people or they don't look at people well, but you couldn't see him because his face didn't actually matter.
it was like a
Because
mask. Yeah,
he was functioning as this force that, like, without his face, he functioned more as and was designed towards the nebulous and unforgiving nature that is living in a society about people trying to like constantly focus on I'm going to be the winner or I'm going to be the best and I'm going to ignore everything else around me. And it doesn't matter who he is. It doesn't even matter what he looks like at that time because what he represents to everybody else is the looming threat of those systems and being in that position.
right.
So it doesn't
And-
matter
and
what
what-
he
And
and
looks
that's
that's
like.
why
You're
it
in
worked
this
so
messed up
well
position.
when he first fought All Might. When he first fought All Might, that worked so well because All for One was acting as a representative. And I thought that was really well done and powerful. That's why I still love that fight. That's why it's still one of my favorites. Because All Might shows up, and because when All Might shows, he's like, "Here to kill me again, All Might," and it's just such a hard line. And I loved how that fight worked. And now you see this fight where the mask is peeled off, like you literally see his face now.
Yeah.
And that's where we finally get, this backstory and this quote unquote humanization. It's
It's
really
not
cool
just it's not
storytelling.
only that though. It's like
Hey,
once he triggered hi, I've been here. Anyway,
Oh.
once he triggered the rewind, it was kind of like when the mask started slipping off and you really started learning more about him, a lot of the intimidation factor just kind of went away very on purpose because the thing with All for One's goal, I've been mentioning this up until this point, it's like he wants to be an immortal, inhuman, monstrous demon lord, but he fundamentally cannot accept that he's human just like everybody else. That feeds into all of his attitude in the recent chapters where he's calling Bakugo and the others extras. Like he's not bothering to acknowledge that they're beating him. And the fact that he cannot acknowledge his own weakness and that he has to just keep on going, I think that puts a different spin on the image that he presented. And it really does show that people are just people on the inside, no matter what they look like.
Yeah.
And that's such a fundamental struggle with MHA in particular. Like, I remember seeing somebody talking about like why are the heroes so focused on saving the villains? Why don't they kill them? It's like, one, they are fighting to kill in a lot of instances. The real objective of the series is to show a lot of those issues that made them that way were there from, like, we're there just to, like, it's just to show that really anybody can go off the wrong path and do the wrong thing. Now you have characters like All for One who are just kind of born wrong. But as we've seen with All for One, when he talks about Shigaraki and stuff, when he talks about different people, it's largely about projection, because he does not have the emotional intelligence or capacity to acknowledge when he's gone wrong, so he has to pick at other people instead.
So I just kind of want to Seth made a comment where it's like about the like, after All Might punched his head off, that he had like his face is masked. But I think and how that kind of like connects back to like this idea of All for One representing like this kind of like the ultimate capitalist. But I think what's very interesting is that when we see his face, his eyes are still like, his eyes are talked about like there's covered in like thick membranes, and like his vision is clouded. And I think that also kind of connects to a capitalist, to this idea of him as a capitalist, because capitalists don't see human beings. Like, if you tell them, oh, X amount of people are going to be fired, they're not thinking about each individual person. They're thinking about an asset. They're thinking about, revenue, profit margins. They don't see people. They see essentially the cost of business transactions. And so even though we see his face, I think it only adds to this idea of him being seen as a capitalist, because the way he sees people has always been identical, even when he wasn't masked,
Yeah, I can't really read MHA in that lens very well, only because Horikoshi himself doesn't really inject that language into it. So, but what I do think is correct is that just that language about how he cannot connect to people, I think worked particularly well in this last fight, because his assumption was that Shigaraki's anger would be his asset. But actually, it came back to bite him and actually was the ultimate failure point in his plan. With Shigaraki's anger, well, All for One is more of a manipulator in that he wants to use people's, like, he understands people's emotions, but he doesn't like empathize. He doesn't feel it himself so much, except when he got connected to Shigaraki. The idea was that Shigaraki's anger can erode the will for One for All. He didn't expect that to erode the will of All for One, so he lost his control over his own quirk. And I think that's more of the dynamic Horikoshi is going for, mostly because you have that line back from Villain Hunt where All for One isn't really caring or talking about like economic systems. It's more like he wants to be able to play as many sides as he can. That's why he can pit the heteromorphs against Central Hospital, or he could pit capitalists against socialists, or he could pit whatever political elements he wants to around. He wants to be able to play with the world. So that's more how I read All for One, generally. But
I
I
definitely see how
understand.
you can see that, but I do
understand
think
your
there's.
interpretation,
I'm
though.
sorry. What you can say, bro?
No, I was saying I understand your interpretation. I just mean
So
that like that's not really the language Horikoshi is using.
the
And I
one
think
thing that I
he
want to
also needs
highlight
to use
though
a bit
is
more
that
explicit.
Horikoshi does take the time, and I think it's odd that he chose this example. But when All for One we kick off this war, he actually does kind of do one of the most like pro-capitalism speeches ever. Is because capitalism lines up with, in a lot of ways, with Darwinism. It's a very Darwinistic economic strategy.
Oh yeah,
Or
100%.
it posits itself as one, but you always end up with like corporatism.
It inherently relies on an underclass.
And the reason why I emphasize this is because one of the things that he talked about, or I think Aoyama uses it as an example, is something that happens in the real world, specifically with, I believe, Nestle.
Yeah,
is
water.
the company that does.
Wasn't he talking about the
he
ownership of
specifically
water?
says a country that doesn't have proper potable water.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure it's Nestle, but what they'll do is that they've gone to certain regions and they'll basically buy the rights to the water so that people cannot access the fresh water themselves, and then charge people for the water that's like 2 miles up the road from them, because they could walk there and get the water, but then they'd be getting water illegally.
Because the water rights are owned by the company. I remember freshman year of college, one of my general ed courses was about food security, and we had like half of this course was literally about water rights. And now, like for example, in Africa, there's like numerous wells that people should be able to access, but they just don't have access to, because that land is being owned by Nestle. And if you do try to take from it, well, there often is very real violence that can be expected. So the cost of water is often coming from people who are deliberately being taken from. Like the problem isn't that water isn't available. The problem is that they can't access it through legal means, which is something that people get confused about when they're discussing, water rights in Africa, or places in like Syria and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, my point was more that like All for One is like standing a layer above that. Not that he doesn't use those methods. I just mean that he is standing on the other layer of it. So like ultimately it doesn't matter so long as he can control people, is how I read it. But
well, yeah, like he's obviously more than that, but I do think it's worth noting that like the hero system and all these like things that Horikoshi has in his story, from from a metatextual lens, do lean towards like a critique of a lot of social systems, especially with so much of the League of Villains functioning as social commentary within Japan itself. So it's like this. So it's like I think you're both right, but I think you have to use both components of your analysis to really be diving into the series, or like to be looking at the character.
100%.
That's more what I was that's more than what I was getting at too. It's like, there's a lot of elements that you can take with that regarding MHA and All for One specifically. He just, I like how he ends up being a much more interesting character to talk about than you would think, especially before this arc. But I'm really impressed with what Horikoshi was able to do with him.
So AFO as a character, I think there was a lot that you could have, and obviously as a My Hero YouTube content creator, this is partially on me for not tapping into this more when I had a bigger platform. But I think it's kind of fascinating how, if you look at a character like AFO, if this were One Piece, if this were Naruto, if this were a lot of other series, I think his theory crafting would have been tapped into a lot more. because as much as we say like, oh, like he's not, there was a lot you could have asked about him for a really long time, and people just weren't asking questions about this character. Like the fandom discussed events around him, like when he goes to prison, we're like, oh, he's gonna get out of prison, you know, like that's being set up here, and it's like, yeah, he eventually got out of prison. Like he goes into prison at the end of the first act and gets out at the end of the second act. All right, yeah, woo. But it's like
we were treating him as a plot device, basically.
Yeah, like nobody was actually talking about the psychology of All for One, or like what they could see. It's like, and some of these pieces didn't come out as soon. Like, for example, when he was like, "You will be mine, little brother," that was a huge moment, and we discussed this a lot on my channel, obviously during the war arc. Like, no, like that means there's some level of either human or there's something extra. There's an extra layer to his quest for one for all than just OP power designed to beat me.
Yeah, that has to be.
But people are just, and I think part of it comes down to this, right? Which is that All for One was taught, like, kind of built up Shigaraki to the reader, which, by the way, this goes into like meta text, but like All for One selling us Shigaraki's growth for just to take it for himself and everybody being pissed at him is actually such genius writing. Because I want you to think about how, like, when you think of a good villain, you don't just think of like rawness and swag. You think about the awful things they do that frustrate you or that make you hate them as a person. And so people are like, get this clown off the screen, get rid of this bozo. I hate this guy. Fuck this guy. Da 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 da. He sucks. He's awful. Bring back Shiggy. We would watch a Shiggy girl. I'm invested in that guy. And it's like, think about that for a second though. This dude is such a good con artist. He conned everybody in the league. He conned the reader, and then he came in and tried to win, and then he loses. Like, he doesn't deserve the win because he hasn't actually earned it, but he's been able to deceive and cheat and manipulate so much of his way through the story. And by extension, the prequel of the story is him successfully conning, cheating, and manipulating his way through life. That a multi-generational run is coming to an end, partially just because, you can't keep up anymore. But like, as a character, he was so, like, he had his hands in so many pots. And so it's just wild to me that such a character got neglected, especially, like, obviously I was busier, so like I didn't, like, I've wanted to do stuff on him for a while, and I just haven't, got a little baby over there. So I at least have an excuse. Some of you other guys don't, though. And so it's just, All for One is somebody that now I think especially people can go back and explore. But I've kind of liked the guy for a while as far as like his actual writing and the way that, like, even with what makes me uncomfortable, like with like how we talk to Camino, because even that is like a kind of like a bait and switch. And I think that for all intents and purposes, he is getting what will be the most cathartic ending of any villain that we encounter. Because let's be real, when Toga died, I don't think most of us were like, yeah, that bitch is gone.
No.
Twice died. None of us, like, most of us weren't like, yeah, fuck Twice. All my homies hate Twice. Like, only really, really strict people that if you place them into My Hero's universe would be the direct reason the League of Villains exists.
I mean, East hates Hawk so much that he wants he wants him to work more than animators at Mappa. That's a level of hatred you will rarely see in a man. Like, that's crazy.
A bit crazy.
When we see Dabi's arm falling off, most of us aren't sitting here like, yeah, it's awesome that he's losing his limbs, falling to pieces, and about to turn into ash. We'll finally be free of this bozo.
Yeah, for a lot of anime fans, like, again, they are very edgy. Like, they instantly associate death and stuff with higher quality. And like, I called this out too when, like, people were complaining that All Might lived. And it's like, if you've been paying attention to All Might's arc, it makes sense for him to live. I pointed that out. They're like, well, it's a war arc. I'm like, you're focusing more on there having to be some form of balance rather than looking for like, okay, what is the story actually trying to accomplish? So does All Might dying at like the climax of the series when Deku's about to have his big hero moment, does that really make sense? No, I didn't think it did. Now, of course, if he had died, I think Horikoshi could have made it work, but I'd much prefer the outcome that we got. Like a lot of people who just don't keep up with the series consistently see these more like optimistic turns or plot twists, and then look at it with disdain, and it's like, I'm sorry, that's a fucking you problem. Like that's you. You're expecting MHA to be something it's not. I think it's also why other series that are darker in tone have kind of like escaped a lot of criticism until more recently, because it's just like, well, they associate dark with good, whether or not they acknowledge it. They do. Like, it's how they respond to things. But anyway, that's my little rant over with.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true, and it is frustrating. But I agree with your take. It's more important to look at what a story is trying to achieve, not so much the dark and grittiness of it. Which isn't to say that darkness or grittiness cannot serve a narrative point. Like obviously that could happen. I think you could I think certain things in MHA could also hit harder if like for example, what if like Hawks did die, but this is his vestige getting his revenge kind of thing? I could see that, quote unquote, hitting harder, but I'm not sure exactly what, in terms of like, if there's more to say with the character than just that, then I would like to see it. Because I do think most of, for example, Hawks's role in the story is actually post-war, like unironically. Like how he said, like Hawks will be working to make society a better place. So I don't see it. So to me, there's just more interesting things you can have with a character who is, alive. But yeah, no, I think it's fair to want and crave that. Like there's a reason certain series are as popular as they are. It's certainly not necessarily because of their plot, but because they have good action, tense moments, and has you on the edge of the seat. So
What you trying to describe?
No, that's just, you could say that about any action or suspense series, whether it's live action or anime. Like, yeah, no, that like I mentioned a few weeks ago, I'm not the biggest fan of Attack on Titan because of how much shock value it relies upon, but there are a lot of people who will take issue with what I say about Attack on Titan, so I don't talk on it so much.
Please,
but
Seth, just please.
Yeah, no.
Give it more chance.
I'll probably pick up the anime sometime because I'm not one for Isayama's art, but at least the anime has a lot of blood money behind it, I suppose.
Okay.
You know what doesn't stack paper of any kind anymore?
What?
Black Clover.
Oh my god. Look. Okay. Just so you know, the first 3 seasons were not made with blood money. Does that help?
Yeah, Wit actually turned down the last season because they were just like, they were being asked to do something in a time frame that was just like they knew was going to be either impossible or was going to absolutely kill their staff. So they're like, no, thank you. And that doesn't mean like, and some people from the old staff did come back and animate some parts of Mappa's take on Attack on Titan, but like there's a reason that release schedule was so broken up. It's not like you're kind of it's not even, it was not only a monthly series, but what was happening in the final chapters of that manga was just absolutely insane. Like to actually achieve it, you would have to spend not only an ungodly amount of time animating it. These were some pretty hard things to pull off and make them look good. So the fact they got it out after in a span of 2 years is honestly pretty impressive.
Yeah,
we did
absolutely.
a lot, like, but and that's why I used to joke that they heard, oh, there's 20 chapters left or something like that. Yeah, we can do that, and just didn't pay attention to the fact that it's a monthly series. But one of the things that I think it's kind of weird that, and this is another derailing, of course, but I think it's kind of crazy that it took JJK for people to kind of turn against Macklemore, because we had the AOT director for Mappa's Eyes back in like 2020, where if you go back and you try to find that picture, he had two black eyes that it looked like somebody just straight up punched him in the face from how like shitty his working conditions were. Like, let me see.
Oh yeah, he was gaunt. He just looked emaciated. He did not look good.
Yeah, Attack on Titan. Like if you type in Attack on Titan director eye bags in your Google browser, you
Oh
pull that
yeah, I
shit up.
remember that. That was so sad to actually like my eyes suck, but I could tell that man just needed a lot of rest. That's
Like
just
the
so sad.
swelling on his eyes is actually ridiculous.
And that's probably with like makeup and stuff. Like
Yeah, because that picture was taken at a convention or something, wasn't it? Or
like it. Too long, too long. Yeah, that's too long. I was gonna post the Google search, but it's being a little funky.
and I heard the director of the first season of Chainsaw Man left Mappa to set up a new company that's supposed to focus on like taking better care of the animators, which is kind of funny because isn't that how Mappa started when they broke off from Studio Madhouse?
I believe so.
yeah, I'm wondering. Well, this is actually more related to the chapter, but so I'm wondering if Rewind actually stops here, or if All for One literally relives his life. And if he does that mean like other villains are maybe not quite dead? Like, I mean, I would be happy if something happened that saved Toga, and I would be curious as to what goes on with Dobby, at least insofar as the Todoroki family goes. But I actually really would be surprised if literally everyone makes this out alive except for the one person who died. I would actually be really happy with that somehow.
Also, as far as because we mentioned, I okay. I want to take this moment to ask, like, do we think AFO is moving after this? Because like I think I think this is close to wrap up. I don't think we get much more.
I can't count him out.
Like
What if Baby AFO just levitates and is sneaking around and then just jump scares Shigaraki at an awkward time? Like I have no idea. I have a hard time thinking this really is it for him. It really felt surprisingly abrupt, if that's the case. I mean, I'm as much as I enjoyed it, it's like I would like to see one last confrontation with Deku in like vested space, at least. But I don't know.
So
really hard to say.
there's a part of me that gets what you're saying, because like while we feel like the villain All for One has been built up, the antagonist, like it's looking more like the quirk All for One is the antagonist. And but I'll when I think of like how cathartic is, like when we're talking about the catharsis of Awful, which also somebody pointed this out, so I just want to say, like, while this might feel abrupt, somebody pointed out it's been like 53 chapters of trying to beat this fucker.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time.
So,
Like it has in fact been a long time. Like it's simply the interaction between him and Bakugo.
yeah,
But like no, this has been a long time coming. So no, like it's not literally abrupt. It's just like, oh shoot, their fight literally ended within a chapter. Wow.
which
Like I didn't fully expect that.
what I like about this is that, okay, so I do think it would have been cool to get like some more rawness or whatever, but the other part about me that likes this is that Bakugo was injured enough that a really long fight would kind of be bullshit.
No, it would. It would also, like, that's another issue. You're totally right. And I am glad we got 5 spreads. Like Bones is gonna hopefully gas this up really well. That's like I loved all the details in it. Like you see like Bakugo blasting away certain projectile type quirks during this fight. You see him dodging the spears or bone spears or whatever throughout, and it's like there's still so much going on within the spreads individually. So I think it's because it appears to us in like the form of spreads that it feels like it's really quick and abrupt. But I think when animated, it's gonna feel a lot less like that. I think it's I don't think it'll be a problem for the anime.
Bakugo's moving at a high speed to do all of these things, but this is arguably like a solid 2-3 minute sequence at least of just blasting away different pieces of the body,
totally
getting closer, and then that final. See, I was almost about to call it a final smash. That final explosion is gonna have. It's gonna be some spicy stuff. Also, small detail that I just also picked up on this. The irony to this being that like right hook from the top, just like provisional license, where like Deku tried to like punch him into the ground, but then he like grabbed him, spun it, and now he's getting the same finish of like that hook to the face and just pop. So okay, so this is the other thing too, is that I feel like this fight specifically, because Dabi kind of killed himself, right? Like even if he's alive, he eventually dies. He basically killed himself. We kind of all agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
Toga killed herself. If All For One cannot fight after getting hit with this is Bakugo getting a kill. Like, yeah, sure, AFO rewound himself, but like this is Bakugo basically getting a kill. But what that also does is open the doorway for Deku to live up to what Gran Torino said and take killing as a form of saving. And so I kind of want to see how this particular section is wrapped up, which we have a 2-week break. So next chapter is in 14 days. But because All For One, as much as like on one hand, I want to see him have a confrontation with Deku, that can happen in the vestige space. He can pop up because it looks like vestiges don't permanently die. We've seen Shigaraki decay vestige for one before. I'm not necessarily going to completely write off his vestige, even though he said like it got destroyed, because I feel like if his vestige were destroyed, I think that also means the quirk has to be destroyed. So as long as the All For One quirk exists, there has to be All For One's vestige somewhere deep within Shigaraki. That's how I'm looking at this. I don't know if that's controversial to you guys. If so, let me know. But I think that, and I said this back when Tokoyami was using like Baldur's Light and smashing AFO into the ground. I think the best ending for All For One, like from a karmic satisfaction standpoint, is for him to die, not to One For All, but to the extras, the side characters, the secondary supporting cast and those people to show that no matter what he does, it is not his time. And that when he had that chance, he got easy clap loaded by Deku. Because he still had a body with the physicality on par with All Might. He was put in the same position that All Might was in when All Might fought him 6 years ago and could not live up to what All Might was doing. Because All Might fought him with just raw strength. It doesn't matter that it's one for all. That quirk was just raw strength for All Might. You give All for One a body on par with All Might's, place him against somebody who uses multiple quirks, and he gets fucking beat down and embarrassed. I don't think any of us disagree that Deku humiliated that man in that first gear shift run.
Okay, it looks like I'm gonna have to get going here, so can I just get my final thoughts?
Of course.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent chapter. I love this fantastic ending to Bakugo's arc. Again, it is that determination, that choice to overcome who he was before, who AFO represents, to not be like AFO and instead just let Deku achieve his own dream as a hero. Because guess what? If you don't get in somebody's way and insist that they have to stay below you, you become a better person yourself and you become a stronger person for it and a stronger hero. And that was the lesson Bakugo was learning this entire series. And it's really come full circle here. I'm hoping next chapter that Shigaraki is actually the one who deals the final blow to AFO, just like because it would be so in character, like despitefully swooping down and just killing the baby even before Rewind reverts him out of existence. I am ready for Deku versus Shigaraki to get going, though. I think it's time. We are right at the very last stretch. Sero and Aizawa and Mike with Kurogiri still waiting in the wings, so I'm anticipating another 2 or so volumes of action. But we're gonna see how things pan out. I really love the way this is wrapping up. Excellent work, Horikoshi, and it's still fun talking with you all about it. And yeah, see you guys next chapter. Bye.
Pleasure as always. Take care, Volk.
Bye.
So,
Bye. Bye.
all right, see ya. So, I was thinking, right, and I was thinking about the All for One backstory, and there was another conclusion that I came to, and it was emotional stagnation. And I think this is a through line for a lot of villains, but I think a lot of them are psychologically still stuck as they were when they were kids. Because like in MVA, All for One has this quote where he's talking about how like you hold on to the hatred in your heart and to like let it grow. When he's talking to Tenko in that like little small building. And after looking at his backstory, part of me thinks is that he was saying that due to his own experience. And wait a minute, is this
Did your mic just break up, Squid?
Yeah, Squid, are you
no,
okay?
no. I'm sorry. I just kind of got I kind of just forgot what I was saying for a minute. But basically what I was saying was that All for One is still stuck in the same mindset as he was as a kid. Because fundamentally, if I'm thinking about why he wants to be a demon lord and all that, is because he saw it in a comic book. Why did he want to be a demon lord? Because he saw it in a comic book? Because, well, fundamentally, I think he already has a natural inclination to take, and an environment that has encouraged his worst impulses for years at this point. And when he sees that like that villain, it he sees in himself someone who has everything, who has all the stuff that he desires, rather than the hero of the story who's constantly struggling. Because I think he was already just he's so used to kind of being on like survival mode. So I think there's like a little bit of maybe it's not karmic, but I think there's a lot of thematic resonance in that All for One is reverting back to a child, in the final battle, because that's where he's mentally been this entire time. He may be intelligent as an adult, but in terms of his maturity, he's petulant. So that's something that I thought about.
Yeah, well, I think well, as you said earlier with the nature stuff about how All for One was raised, I like how that was contrasted perfectly with, how Bakugo was raised. The childhood stuff obviously matters very much, and that's what I think Horikoshi is drawing to. And that's
Mhm.
why Horikoshi, of course, is very keen on like to draw saving children. Like you also see that one panel in this arc where there's a child just watching the television, like, his life depends on it, kind of. Because it does, but like not in the way an adult might think. Like an adult doesn't necessarily look at it, think that, oh, this kid's going to remember this for the rest of his life, kind of thing. Like you never really quite know what will stick with a
Yeah.
child. So
Mhm.
I think that goes to the core of what Horikoshi's trying to say with this manga. This manga is intended to be this type of um a passing of tradition, literally, the heroic tradition, I should say. So
Mhm.
I think it's that's what makes MHA compelling to me, relative to something that's a bit more uh countercultural, or in what's it,
In Vogue.
yeah, like like there's a lot of stuff that just comes into fashion, but MHA isn't really a series that's kind of designed that way.
Yeah.
Although of course it does have like elements of it too, like all the characters are drawn attractively as they can be, kind of, and like there's obviously marketable aspects to MHA. I'm not saying there isn't, like,
You can
but I
tell
just
there.
mean,
Yeah.
but the message of the story is very is traditional, in the sense that tradition means to pass on to someone else. Like it's literally like taking someone's hand, kind of thing, and that's what I like about that aspect, and it's targeting, of course, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very nice story.
Well, I also think that, you know, eh, I think one thing that I've kind of came to is that it wasn't just, I guess, All for One that's emotionally stagnant. I think you could argue a lot of like the villain's actions are kind of happening due to their maturity never developing past their point of trauma. I mean, you could look at Toya. Toya's still fundamentally still stuck in a very,
Yes.
you know, I guess I wouldn't say like in a very youthful stage of his like emotional development. When he was first burned, I believe at 13. When he was pretty much burned to a crisp, and that initial like hatred and just that want of approval and the neglect he faced from his dad and from his family, you know, manifested into something far more violent. And what didn't help was that his quirk was naturally very intense. Then you have Tenko, Shigaraki. He's still stuck in that very childlike phase. I'd argue Toga as well. Um, is also still, I mean, like her ideas on love are very like inherently juvenile, and I think it's because she hasn't been able to grow past that point. So I think there's a very consistent through line of villains being emotionally stagnant and not being able to mature past their point of trauma in the
So
story.
I also want to say that with the Toga example, it's especially the like rational outcome for her trauma to like her to have such a stunted and limited view of love.
Mm-hmm.
Because like let's be real here, how you love is informed by your parents.
100%.
Uh
Yeah.
and like the relationships they have, and so like obviously if you get into relationships and you get to have friends, Like you can develop love outside of that dynamic, and it can give you a juxtaposition to not replicate that shit. So glad I made a good amount of friends growing up so that I didn't take my family's example growing up into how I would handle a lot of stuff going forward. So in Toga's case, though, because she's freaky, she didn't get a bunch of like grade school friends, so she didn't get any. So her family
build
isn't
real
necessarily-
relationships.
She had nothing. So her love that she understands is effectively just the one thing she had, which was like, sometimes I think things look cool and it makes me want to bite them. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, it's very juvenile. It hasn't progressed past any
And she,
point. Yeah.
all the opportunities were technically there. They were technically there. Like, and like, what's crazy is that babies will bite you. And they don't even do it to be mean. They just like end up biting you because they're just like, I don't know, yeah, hey, let me chew on your finger, parent. Yeah, and bite my parent's hand. My daughter has bitten my head before.
The reason why they do that is because they can't talk yet. So the way they try to communicate is through action. So for example, they want to like let you know something, they'll like nibble on you or just straight up and take a chomp, like chomp. So
She once chewed my nose. Like, babies will just bite you. But like, she didn't do it like in malice. She was like playing around and she like bit my nose while we were like goofing off. And sometimes she gets nose rubs because we're nosy. And she bit my nose. I don't know if that was like her attempt at nosy and she just didn't know how to like do it right or what, but like she did it. And so it's like that like a child biting someone is like super like just stock standard. It's what humans can do. It's like a thing that a baby can do. So it's like by the time she's like 3 or 4, it's like her parents were just like, and obviously since she's got fucking vampire fangs, you definitely didn't want to get bit by her when she was a baby or at all. So it's like their reaction is even more visceral. But it's one of those things that like you never showed your daughter affection in a way that could help her express it in another angle through another means. Like, I don't think my daughter's going to be biting my nose when she's 4. Like, this is purely
this is very like this is very early development. A lot of these behaviors are like start to like disappear at around like I believe 2 or 3. So yeah.
I'll let her watch Attack on Titan again. That's the baby Titan. Baby. But, and I'm just saying, like, the only character, and like you could argue, because I saw somebody say that, All for One didn't have any trauma or anything like that. And it's like, well, technically having to grow up homeless after living in the corpse of your mom and getting washed away in a river with rats, it's technically pretty traumatizing. But the difference is that nature versus nurture, right? Like that's a conversation that people have. You have things that if your brain chemistry, which this happened to a lot of people back when lead was in gasoline and paint and all this other stuff. Man. Like lead getting removed from that stuff made it so that there was far less aggression. Like the crime rate actually dropped.
Yep, because of the removal of lead gas.
And gas and all this other stuff where people were basically walking around with lead poisoning without even realizing it. So if you're born before the late 80s, I want to say, you have significantly higher lead poisoning than somebody born in 2000, just off of breathing the air.
Yep.
So I forgot where I was going with that. Just thinking about how insane it is that lead poisoning is like actually secretly super common.
No, there's a lot of fun things. It was the nature versus nurture.
Yeah, talking about nature versus nurture.
So
wait, I just want to add one thing. For me, it's less nature versus nurture, but it's more like the combination of which, and like for each person, like which was more like prominent, you know?
Yeah.
At least that's
And,
what I think of it as well. Finish
Yeah,
your point.
what took
and
root?
so yeah, like AFO's quirk, we've seen that everybody's quirk / individuality
Yeah.
does impact their expression, their personality, etc. So AFO was given his nature, and the only person that could nurture him was his little brother, who he was in charge of, who he was overseeing,
Who was
which means that he was not in an authority position to nurture him. He could try to be kind to him, but it's not the same.
But it's also like you also have to factor in the era that he grew up in. He grew up during one of the most violent eras of history. You know, All for One. There's a good amount of dialogue where he's referencing a very survivalist mentality. You know, and
So
you look at his backstory. Sorry.
Basically, what I was going to say is everything in his backstory does nothing to provide a nurturing environment to push his nature to being wrong. Everything about his life was basically like, yeah, that base nature you have, you're gonna need that. You're gonna have to keep that. And so, like, the tragedy of AFO is that he did not have any incentive to not be what he was born as due to the circumstances of his birth. If you have All for One born in that exact same like scenario, but born in this era of My Hero, he does not become the villain that he is.
100%. He might struggle with his impulses when it comes to taking. He might still have those very those kleptomaniac kind of like tendencies.
He could end up like Bakugo,
the
actually.
development into the sheer violence that he learned to utilize, I don't think is there because, like I said, the era he grew up in, one of the first people we see him kill is basically a hate group. If you look at the dialogue, they were literally talking about going and killing, you know,
Exceptional
realistically what would
children.
have been heteromorphs, and it's like when you are in such a young age and you're seeing people either being killed or being targeted for death because of just their appearance and that knowing that they would do the same to you because you have an ability, it's like why wouldn't you develop such a survivalist mentality, especially when the ability you are born with already naturally inclines you to want to possess things. He was naturally possessive.
I would say the flip side to that is literally Yoichi, who was born in the exact same circumstances as All for One. He just didn't have the power to act the way All for One does. But Yoichi was born in the same impoverished, chaotic state, but he was able to get something different from it than All for One. But that's also due to their just relationship. All for One had the power he needed to ensure Yoichi's survival. Yoichi himself didn't actually have to necessarily fight. Whereas
it wasn't until like All for One was like a teenager that we finally see him wearing regular, clothes. Everything before that, he's just wearing rags, literally a rag, a cloth.
And that's why my takeaway is that ultimately, like, it was already in his nature to be like violent and detestable. And there was nothing about the world was able to push him in another direction.
Right.
Like, it's the ultimate case of confirmation bias, but like he had no real support and
he didn't have a Deku.
And so like and the question becomes, obviously there's some gap that we're missing because we see him like walking around and killing people, but that's at 2, 3, maybe 4. So it's arguable that maybe some family did find him washed up in a river and raised the twins for a bit. But we don't know that. Like, for all we know, he could have just been out here taking nutrition off of anything and everything. I don't know. Because babies can't drink water for the first year.
Yep.
Or like first 6 months or so. So I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna use there, but something's going on. So there's clearly like a little bit of extra gap filling to be done. You could argue that maybe that kindness that from some random orphanage or people who tried to save them, helped them out. And that's part of why Yoichi is more gentle and AFO just didn't bother to internalize any of that kindness. I don't know. But AFO has a quirk that creates a disposition within him to inherently make him more selfish.
Yeah.
You can overcome that, but it doesn't guarantee that you will if you don't have the proper setup. And I see you guys talking about how Yoichi should have been his Deku or something to like enable him. The only problem with that is that, and this will sound bad, your responsibility cannot make you a better person in that way, typically.
Yeah.
Because Yoichi was fragile, even if he's like, oh yeah, like you don't have to do that. Like AFO's sitting here like, man, you wouldn't even have those clothes if I wasn't out here murking niggas. You wouldn't have this if I wasn't out here doing that. So
You'd
like
be dead.
Yoichi doesn't come off as a kind person who is just trying to help him see the world through like a better lens. He comes off as a naive person who doesn't understand what it's taking for them to get what they have.
Yeah, he's a dependent
because he can't box for real.
And so it's not exactly that. It's not Yoichi's fault for being in that position, but it takes a third party typically, even like if you're that close to each other, because they're effectively codependent. So yeah, I can't really say Yoichi should have been able to change him. If they had separated and come back together, it would make sense. AFO only saw him as a possession. He was only a dependent because, like I just said, the bad things that AFO did directly benefited Yoichi, at least when they were children. Whether he realized it or not is a whole other discussion. And so that's not going to change someone the same way. Because if it's kind of like all right. So let's say you start selling drugs and your significant other knows you sell drugs. And then your significant other says, oh, I want this Birkin bag, or I want X expensive thing. Just pick an expensive ass thing. Something that's like, whether you want to say the new PS5 or $1,000+ gaming computer or whatever the case may be, pick something expensive. Now, you tell your significant other, the only way to get this is if I go move this crack. And then you start moving crack you get them that bag, you get them that whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, I think it's a little messed up that you sell crack and da-da-da. Is there another way? You are not going to want to hear that because the reason you sell crack is partially to get them the shit they want.
Pretty much.
And so it's like, should you be able to have an influence over that person? I would say yes, but in principle, like in the tangible sense, you won't, because part of why they do what they do that's bad is for you. So there's also that layer of, well, you should still appreciate the benefits you get from me doing this, and you don't have a problem with it when it directly benefits you. And that's the thing that's in the way of like what Yoichi being able to convert AFO out of his selfishness.
My thing is that like, even when you take into the like context that they were born in, it's like without AFO or without any real muscle to keep them safe from the literal anti-quirk mobs who, according to the MVA, are literally going around murdering anybody with a quirk, and frankly anyone who supported people with quirks. It's like, if y'all didn't have that that real muscle, it's like you would have just been a casualty. You wouldn't even been a footnote in the history books. You would have just been on some. You would have been mentioned as like a side note about the casualties suffered in some battle. or some skirmish. That would have been the result you faced.
It's crazy because
Realistically, you would
comparing
have you wouldn't
AFO,
even been made it to that point. You would have died in the river. So it's like, what we
comparing
doing?
AFO to and Yoriichi to Corazon and Dofi is wild because I definitely still like AFO more than Dofi.
I mean, I feel like one
But
would, sorry. I feel like
but
you
that comparison, it works because it was like Dofi was a right asshole.
yeah.
And as far as Dofi was concerned, he was doing everything for his family and for Corazon. So there was no reason for him to like really care about what Corazon had to say. Like Corazon was mute. He just knew his words didn't matter. As long as Dofi felt like he was the one doing everything.
But it's also
So
like when you have people with like a natural kind of like sense of empathy versus someone who struggles with it, it's like, Daffy, I would argue, was someone who was conforming to Tenryubito teachings, to Tenryubito culture. And, Horizon kind of like, Homer was very much, against that stuff. But it's like when you look at what they later go through, especially like when they're literally tied up and like getting arrows shot at them, like you take someone who's already kind of in a very bad like philosophy because that's what they've been taught, that's what they've been exposed to, and you also are creating someone who is gonna kind of like devalue human life, and that's one way I think you can read how Doflamingo developed, as a man. So they kind of also have that, I think, kind of similarity in common. Their worst impulses were encouraged. I just think All for One's a little more explicit with that, considering how much of an emphasis there is on, childhood in the story.
Right, so Aniki, I actually have to head off, so I'm gonna give my final thoughts.
all right, we can start wrapping up here then.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Joseph, give your final thoughts.
Okay, yeah, no, this was a fantastic chapter. Like Horikoshi really earning that week break with all those double page spreads. Um, and I find it funny that the Fierce Wings quirk factor pretty much unionized All for One stolen quirks. Uh, and like art was amazing. I really liked the battle itself. Like seeing Bakugo's arm at the end really hurt to even look at. But yeah, can't wait for the next one.
All right. Squid.
For me, I found this chapter, fine. I'm someone who looks at the leak, so when I initially saw it, I was very much, I first had to get my copium out, right? As I always do, but then I chilled out and I was like, let me read this, analytically, let me put on that brain. And then I was like, yeah, I see why it happened that way. Were there some things that maybe I wanted a little bit different? Probably, but it's like, I see why it happened. So I'll say it's like, it was a fine chapter. The art was amazing. I know Horikoshi's planning to do like a horror manga after this series, so I legitimately can't wait for that. Like the art there is gonna be wild. And ultimately I think my biggest takeaway from these past couple of chapters, to be honest, is how much All for One thematically connects to the story. And honestly, I think his real strength as a character or as a function in the story is, how thematically resonant he is to all of this social commentary and the themes presented within the story. Um, I think there was one thing we didn't like kind of talk about, but like we talked about kind of All for One as a result of like class analysis, but there's also a lot of religious symbolism to him. And maybe like next stream or something, we could talk about like how those two like symbolisms for his character kind of like intersect and relate to each other. So yeah, ultimately I found this chapter, fine. But ultimately, I have a lot more respect for All for One as a villain and as his function in the story. So that's my thoughts.
All right. Steph, you want to give your final thoughts?
Yeah. So thanks for having me again. Sorry for missing the last few.
Oh, you're okay. You're okay.
A lot of similar thoughts to Squid. All for One as a character has really benefited from these last few chapters, and I think that I actually also did want to touch on the religious iconography of it. I thought it was interesting how the glowing baby sort of had that religious messianic kind of coding to him. We saw some imagery in World Heroes missions that suggested, some reverence to it. But then you see All for One actually kill him to become like the demon lord, and I just think that's kind of amazing. Just to really that was the moment where he gained his dream was killing the quote unquote messiah, and I'm like, wow. Anyway, no, I think that is a very interesting topic to talk about sometime. As far as like this specific chapter goes, we already talked about it. It felt a bit abrupt, but that's because it's pages on a book rather than an actual animation sequence. I don't think I'll be thinking the same. I don't think I'll feel the same way when I see it animated at all. At least I hope so, given Bones has its work cut out for them this upcoming with the upcoming seasons. Oh my gosh. The art was amazing, and it's really cool to see all the details he packed in. The Hawks bit was funny. I did enjoy it, like literally a sight for sore eyes kind of thing. And All for One goes out fairly appropriately, at least as far as combat goes. I do still have a little bit more I want to see from him in terms of hopefully an interaction with Deku in the Vestige Realm, at least. But for now, though, this was a very satisfying chapter. A lot of things got tied together. I'm pleasantly surprised with how well Bakugo's elements worked as a contrast. And yeah, no, it was a wonderful chapter, and I'm really excited for 2 weeks from now. We have a break, so yeah, it'll be a while, but it'll certainly be worth it, I am sure.
Thank you, everybody that came through, both in the cast and well, I guess I can say the cast, that works. And in the comments, I appreciate you. I'm gonna read the super chat that came through. It says, get your COVID-19 flu shots and flu shots for the free at Walgreens, even if you're uninsured. Which, I mean, if you guys are worried about getting the flu or COVID or anything like that, you definitely should go ahead and get your vaccinations. And then we will probably be off next week. I don't know if this is a magazine break or a jump break. Let me double check that real quick just to see when the next chapter is supposed to release for some of these series, and that'll tell me which one it is. All right, yeah, so this is just the My Hero break. So next chapter is going to be on the 24th. Like I said, I expect everybody to be busy that day, so you'll probably get a quick and dirty stream for Christmas Eve. And not necessarily dirty, but it'll just kind of be it's going to be me reading the chapter, and then that'll probably just be it because everybody's going to be busy with their families. I don't expect people to be available on Christmas Eve. So that'll just be something you guys can just watch when you have time, because I don't expect that to last an hour. Thanks to everybody for coming through, and not that kind of dirty. Sunday OVA next week. That's up to the gang, honestly. If you guys are feeling like talking about other stuff that you read next week, I'm down. It's just a matter of whether or not have we done any Sunday OVAs this year? Ooh.
We could talk about the actual OVA too.
Well, I guess that is possible. All right, I guess we'll see how people feel.
Yeah.
You guys feel like talking about whatever's in Shonen Jump or whatever you've been reading?
That could be nice.
In general, we could just do a Sunday
I have
OVA
some thoughts
media.
on Jujutsu Kaisen.
So yeah,
There's some certain things that are happening. I don't know, gang. I don't know.
I've been keeping up with Mama Yu Yu and Kagurabachi. That could be cool to talk about a little bit, even though they're still kind of new and still kind of developing. Well, there are some things.
We gotta make it more fun.
Yeah.
Also, check out Wild Strawberry. My wife is a huge fan of it. I enjoy it. So go ahead. Oh, I know I was doing the MHA reread too. There's a whole lot of stuff that we could be doing. All right, I guess we'll all talk about it and see what people want to do next week. Or you guys know you can message me during the week if you have something. If you're like, yeah, you know what, I really do want to talk about this next week. Then you got it. We'll talk about it Sunday. So well, I guess what I'll do Sunday is I'll kind of pop in, or I'll kind of float the meeting to a couple people, see who all wants to come in, and then when the stream starts next week, if we do one, it'll start with everybody already in, and we'll just kind of talk about what we've been looking at or reading lately, and what we want to talk about. And that's, dude, you can even talk about what video games you've been playing, so, or movies or TV shows. Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More free form. Just it'll basically just be a media day. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.